Book name: One Glass Too Many, The Islamic View on the Prohibition of Alcohol. Author name: Dr. Sahib Mustaqim Bleher. Publisher name: Islamic Dawah Center International. Page 1. Everybody would admit that there are problems with alcohol, drink driving for example, or violent crime, in which alcohol abuse plays a part. Yet most argue that the moderate consumption of alcohol, as is customary in our society, does not do much harm. Let's take a hard look at the facts. Alcohol is a bigger problem than we tend to admit, costing us dearly. According to the UK government's national statistics for England alone, published in 2013, a quarter of adults aged 16 and over in England were classified as hazardous drinkers. Hazardous drinking being defined as a pattern of drinking which brings about the risk of physical or psychological harm. 1.6 million were considered to be problem drinkers. In 2011, there were a total of 6,923 deaths directly related to alcohol consumption, and alcohol misuse costs the NHS £3.5 billion a year, or £120 per taxpayer. The trends are similar for the rest of the UK, and the problem starts early. According to Drink Aware, 38% of children aged 11 to 15 for whom alcohol remains illegal have had a drink. Subheading: More than a health risk. In addition to health problems from drinking, there are social costs from drink driving to domestic violence, including child battering, serious vandalism, and grievous bodily harm. According to Alcohol Concern, the annual cost of alcohol-related crime in England is £11 billion. In 2012, there were 9,930 casualties of drink driving accidents, 230 of whom were killed. The Institute of Alcohol Studies figures of March 2014 estimate the cost of lost productivity in the workplace due to alcohol at £7.3 billion a year. Their survey data indicate that a third of employees admitted having attended work with a hangover and 15% of having been drunk at work. The Faculty of Public Health estimates that 70% of peak time admissions at hospital accident and emergency units are alcohol related, and that alcohol consumption is a direct cause of 1,000 suicides every year. Every Christmas, there is a nationwide campaign against drink driving, but overall governments spend very little on prevention, possibly because there is a great deal of tax revenue in the sale of alcoholic beverages, totaling £14.6 billion in 2010 alone. And although the total cost of alcohol misuse to the economy is almost twice as much, only a small proportion of that is paid directly from the public purse, the remainder having to be borne by private enterprise and individuals. Subheading: Governmental advice. The UK government, through its Chief Medical Officer, offers advice on the amounts of alcohol consumption considered safe. In 2016, these figures were revised from the higher 1995 levels tolerated from men, 21 units per week, down to those already in place for women, 14 units, less than a daily glass of wine per week, and generally advising everybody to have at least 2 completely alcohol-free days a week. Previous governmental advice from 2009 recommended that children should not consume any alcohol at all until the age of 15. The reality, however, is that such advice is a fig screen for the government's inability to influence drinking habits and is largely going to be ignored. When people have a culture of drinking, they do not base their habit on rational decisions, recognizing that in the long term, even allegedly moderate alcohol consumption can lead to serious health problems from memory loss and depression through an increased cancer risk to heart disease, liver damage, kidney failure, impotence, and infertility. And in the face of persisting myths that a little bit of alcohol is good for you, the new government guidelines insist that there is no justification for recommending drinking on health grounds. Yet, within society, even problem drinking, with its damaging health and social consequences, is frequently viewed as a minor anomaly in what it seems otherwise an acceptable cultural practice. Subheading: the spiritual dimension. Islam takes a different view. It values the moral and spiritual health of a nation as much as its physical well-being. It considers anything that interferes with the normal working of the mind, numbs our senses, thereby reducing our level of shame or responsibility, or clouds our perception, as harmful. This includes alcohol as well as other drugs altering the mind, and recognizing that different people react quite differently to the same stimulant. It does not leave the judgment as to how much is acceptable to them. Too many people thought they had control over their drinking habit, yet ended up having one glass too many. Islam categorically states that if a substance can destroy the clarity of the mind in large quantities, it is harmful even in minute quantities. Islam, therefore, advocates a total prohibition of narcotic drugs, including alcohol. It forbids the use, not just the abuse of these substances. Subheading: education before prohibition. Many would by now point to the prohibition period in America and how it utterly failed by driving the habit underground. As God is aware of human nature, Islam acknowledges how entrenched such habits can be in people and that they cannot be changed overnight. The gradual prohibition of alcohol has to go hand in hand with an educational campaign to build a moral awareness and spiritual identity in our society. When Islam was first established over 14 centuries ago in Arabia, continuing the Judeo-Christian tradition of prophets from Abraham over Moses to Jesus to Muhammad, peace be upon them all, the harm that alcohol caused was well recognized, but it was not immediately eradicated. In a first revelation, the Quran, the holy book for Muslims, acknowledged the benefits of alcohol, for example, its medical applications, but pointed out that its harms outweighed those benefits by far. Next, it forbade believers from praying whilst under the influence of alcohol, thus making it clear that spirituality and drunkenness don't mix. Finally, many years later, it was altogether prohibited as the handiwork of the devil. By then, The early Muslims who had lived through the spiritual and moral teachings of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, had realized the harms of the drug as well as the benefits of the Islamic system of values as the foundations of a strong and caring society. They happily spilled whatever alcoholic beverage was left in their possession, and the streets of Medina were reported as having been awash with the stuff. Subheading: Rebuilding a drug and alcohol-free society. Modern society has come a long way since those days. We pride ourselves of great technical achievements, yet we have also fallen back into the evils of drunkenness and the harm it does to so many people because we have lost our moral consciousness and sense of direction. We forgot that there is more to human civilization than material advancement. Drained of true humanity, many seek escape and consolation in drink and drugs. However, this situation is not irreversible. Whilst the hypocritical approach of the American Prohibition, where law enforcement agencies collided with gangster syndicates, was bound to fail, Islam shows the way how a pure and content society can be built, which needs not to be ashamed of its darker side and need not numb its senses in guilt and desperation. The cultural change Western societies went through with regards to smoking can also be repeated with regards to drinking, using education and social restrictions to turn the habit from cool and fashionable to uncool and unacceptable in public places. Of course, individuals with an existing problem can't do it by themselves. They require support and a reason to make the change. So next time, before you tend to drown your worries in another glass, to be followed by another and yet another, put it down and find out about the Islamic alternative. Book end.